She began kiss him, but he doesn't want.
In a bustling neighborhood of Lagos, Nigeria, where modern high rises cast shadows over traditional markets, lived a peculiar street sweeper named Mayowa. Every morning before sunrise, he would emerge from his modest one-room apartment, dressed in faded overalls, pushing his weathered broom across the busy streets. What made Mayowa peculiar wasn't his chosen profession, it was the fact that he always seemed to be smiling, even as others looked down on him with barely concealed disdain. The neighborhood where Mayowa worked was home to some of Lagos's most ambitious young professionals, who drove expensive cars and wore designer suits. Among them was Folake Adedayo, a rising star at a prestigious investment bank, known for her sharp tongue and sharper business acumen. She lived in the penthouse of Crystal Towers, the building Mayowa cleaned every morning. Folak had a habit that many considered distasteful. She was obsessed with knowing everyone's income. At dinner parties, she would casually steer conversations towards salaries and bonuses. She would probe her neighbors about their careers and earnings during elevator rides. Her friends tolerated this quirk because of her connections and influence, but they whispered about it behind her back. One particularly humid morning, as Mayowa swept the marble steps of Crystal Towers, Folake emerged in her usual designer outfit, briefcase in hand. She had noticed him daily for months, and his perpetual happiness, despite his obvious poverty, irritated her. Today, she decided to satisfy her curiosity. "Hey, you!" she called out, her high heels clicking against the marble. "How much do they pay you to sweep these streets?" Mayowa looked up, his smile unwavering. "Good morning, Ms. Adedayo. That's an interesting question. Would you like to hear a story instead?" Folek checked her expensive watch, annoyed but intrigued. She had 30 minutes before her first meeting. "Make it quick," she said, settling onto a nearby bench. Mayowa leaned on his broom and began. There once was a powerful king named Obasola, who had the same habit as you. He was obsessed with knowing everyone's worth in gold. He believed a person's value could be measured by wealth, and he kept detailed records of every subject's earnings in his kingdom. One day, a mysterious trader arrived at his palace. Unlike the usual merchants who displayed their wares openly, this trader carried nothing but a small, ordinary-looking box made of wood. The trader requested an audience with the king, promising to show him something that would change his understanding of wealth forever. Intrigued, King Obasola granted the audience. The trader opened the box, and to everyone's surprise, it was empty. "Your Majesty," the trader said, "this box can reveal a person's true wealth. However, there's a catch. Anyone who asks to see another's wealth must first reveal their own, and the box will take half of it as payment." The king, confident in his vast riches, agreed to the demonstration. He declared his wealth, millions in gold and precious stones. Immediately, half his fortune vanished into the box. Excited to finally know everyone's true worth, he began summoning his subjects individually. But something strange happened. When the box revealed each person's wealth, it showed not their gold or properties, but something entirely different. The palace cook's wealth appeared as thousands of satisfied smiles from people she had fed. The royal gardener's wealth manifested as countless flowers that had bloomed under his care. The court jester's wealth was measured in the laughter he had inspired. The king was confused and frustrated. "This isn't real wealth," he protested. "Show me their gold." The trader smiled mysteriously and replied, "The box shows the wealth that truly matters, the value one adds to the world. Your obsession with knowing others' material wealth has cost you half of yours, yet you've gained no real understanding of their true worth." Folak shifted uncomfortably on the bench, but Mayowa continued. The story doesn't end there. The king, having lost half his fortune, became obsessed with regaining it. He began charging people to enter his palace, demanding payment for his audiences, and taxing his subjects more heavily. With each coin he regained, he felt his power returning, but the mysterious trader had left behind the box, and it continued its work. Whenever the king demanded to know someone's wealth, it would take half of his, no matter how much he had accumulated. Soon his riches dwindled to nothing while his subjects began to prosper, not in gold but in the wealth of community, kindness, and purpose. A young servant girl finally approached the desperate king and said, "Your Majesty, perhaps the box is teaching us that asking about others' wealth diminishes our own, not just in gold, but in dignity, respect, and wisdom." Mayowa paused, noting how Folak's expression had changed from dismissive to thoughtful. He continued, "The king finally understood. He had spent his life measuring worth in coins while ignoring the true riches around him, the loyalty of his subjects, the beauty of his kingdom, and the wisdom of his advisors. His obsession with others' wealth had made him the poorest person in his realm. From that day forward, King Obasola changed his ways. He removed the wealth records from his library and instead began keeping chronicles of his subjects' achievements, their contributions to the kingdom, and the lives they had touched. As a reminder, the magical box remained in the palace, but it was never needed again. Years later, when travelers visited the kingdom, they found a prosperous realm where people's worth was measured not by their gold, but by their impact on others' lives. The king had become known not for his riches, but for his wisdom in understanding that true wealth comes in many forms, and the richest person isn't always the one with the most money. Mayowa straightened up and resumed his sweeping. "That's why I smile, Ms. Adedayo, because I know my true wealth isn't in my pocket. It's in the clean streets that children can play on, the fresh air people breathe as they walk to work, and the pride I take in making our community better, one sweep at a time." Folak sat in silence, her meeting forgotten. For the first time, she really looked at the street sweeper before her. She noticed how the security guards greeted him warmly, how children waved as they passed, and how the street vendors saved him fresh fruits from their morning stock. In the days that followed, people noticed a change in Folak. Her probing questions about salaries and bonuses ceased. Instead, she asked different questions about people's dreams, their proudest achievements, the challenges they'd overcome. She started volunteering at a local youth center, teaching financial literacy to teenagers from underprivileged backgrounds. But the story wasn't finished teaching its lessons. 1 year later, a surprising announcement was made during Crystal Tower's annual residents' meeting. Mayowa, the humble street sweeper, was revealed to be one of the city's largest philanthropists, anonymously funding educational programs and small business initiatives throughout Lagos. He had never flaunted his material wealth, choosing instead to live simply and focus on his street sweeping. which he saw as his way of staying connected to the community. The residents who had looked down on him were shocked, but none more than Folake. That evening, she found Mayowa at his usual spot, faithfully sweeping the streets as the sun set. "Why didn't you tell me," she asked, "that day when I questioned you about your income, why did you share that story instead?" Mayowa leaned on his broom, his familiar smile warming his face. "Because, Miss Adedayo, you would have learned nothing if I had told you about my bank account. But by sharing the story, I hoped you would understand a truth that took me years to learn, that asking about someone's income often reveals more about the asker than the person being asked." He continued, "Oh, in my years of living, simply despite my means, I've learned that wealth is like a garden. The more you obsess over comparing the size of your plot to others, the less time you spend tending to your own flowers. And sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow in the most unexpected places." The tale of Folake and Mayowa spread throughout Lagos, evolving with each telling. Some versions said the magical box from Mayowa's story existed and that he was its mysterious trader. Others claimed that Folake went on to establish a foundation that celebrated people's contributions to society rather than their financial success. But the most interesting twist came several years later when young professionals started a new tradition in Lagos. Instead of asking about each other's salaries, they would ask, "What's your wealth story?" Inviting people to share not their income, but the richness of their experiences, the wealth of their impact, and the fortune of their purpose. In corporate offices and market stalls alike, people began to understand that true wealth couldn't be measured in naira or dollars, but in the lives touched, the minds inspired, and the changes made in the world. And somewhere in Lagos, a street sweeper continued his work, smiling at the knowledge that his simple story had transformed not just one person's understanding of wealth, but an entire community's. The story of Mayowa and Folake became a modern parable, shared in schools and homes across Nigeria, reminding each new generation that before asking about someone's income, they should first question their reason for wanting to know. In the answer to that question lies a wealth of self-understanding that no amount of money could ever buy. And so the tale continues to be told, its lesson echoing through the streets of Lagos. True wealth isn't always visible or measurable in currency. Sometimes it's found in the wisdom of a street sweeper, the transformation of a banker, and the understanding that the most valuable questions we can ask are not about what others possess, but about who they are and how they contribute to the world around them. As for Mayowa, he still sweeps the streets of Lagos every morning, his smile as bright as ever. And if you listen carefully, you might hear him humming an old proverb. The one who asks about another's wealth seeks to measure their worth. But the truly wealthy are those who never need to ask, for they measure their riches in the lives they touch and the good they do.